We were once mankind. We were humanity. And now, we're no more than pets. They've sown their crops, snuffing out our plant life. They built these megastructures that spew methane, manufacturing their atmosphere. It's already hard to breathe. Impossible to breathe if you are close to the stacks. They hack into our psyche, into our minds, paralyzing us, taking control of the cerebrum and the limbic system, rendering us as slaves. I wonder if deep down each person knows we're already dead. Humans becoming some kind of surrogate incubators for the alien young. People that have defected say it's worse than hell. Every rational thought tells us it's over. Every vile, deceptive, chemical emotion tells us it isn't.
They have built a conservatory!
Come on, you freaky-faced fuck, come on.
I'll go to the new conservatory.
Every once in a while, something goes our way. Just 1 in 1,000. Just enough to keep fighting. Even for small victories, it seemed that everything was lost. A glimmer of hope. People will pay for this. They always do. We picked up Amir in Sector 7.
Kill him. Just fucking kill him. All that shit they put in his head, he's not even one of us.
Stop.
It's okay. Let's get this off. There. You're free. I'm not gonna hurt you. I know what they did.
We gotta check the wounded, man.
Okay. I'm Sarah. It's okay. It's okay. It's all right.
This world had changed all of us. But Amir had been reborn as something entirely new.
The ones that are experimented on, her theory is it's because they have some kind of predisposition. They're savants of some kind.
See all these men? These men are trying to stop the genocide.
Alpha team, move out!
You can help us turn the tide, Amir. Help us. Please, tell me what futures you see.
Threat down in Fox Squad.
Want anyone looking at it?
And keep out of its line of sight, right?
Go! Go! Go!
Martinez! Go! Go!
It's wounded!
That fucking thing! Don't let it get away! Don't look at it! Look away!
Put it down, Martinez! Put it down! Don't do it, Martinez! Don't do it!
Cut its fucking head off.
There's someone there I want you to meet. The only survivor of the River God if it's still caught.
J-Stock told me you might be able to shed some light on some things for us. They were monsters in the shape of men. We lit that jungle on fire. No pain. Invisible. Something I'll never be able to explain.
Look, I'm not here to connect the dots for you. The events at Tar Heel are classified.
I think the CIA better start to explain what the fuck is going on here, or you're gonna have a mutiny on your hands.
There was something along the riverbank. They started weird. I don't know what it was. We were shooting everywhere. They had us pinned down. And I just seen him there looking at me. The River God. And next, I'm in South Carolina, back on the day we were gonna deploy.
And?
The planes. There was Russian aircraft. Like MiGs, remember? There was this blue napalm. Like a propane flame napalm. They were burning us. Soldiers burning. Freddie and the boys. They pulled me out of the ditch. I was like, here again, but on fire. He's raising the dead up. Like ghosts.
I'm not sure you care if these soldiers live or die. You don't even care if you live or die. Who are you? What are you becoming?
Dreams. More like visions. It's trying to tell me something. I can't understand what it's saying. It just sounds like noise.
I spoke to soldiers in your previous unit. I've heard all the accounts about you. Hines isn't meant to die. finds is protected by a divine hand. Objects were put in your path to shield you from the right piece of shrapnel. The universe keeping you alive, saving you, as though it has a plan for you. And the river god, that man you're compelled to hunt, he is an error. Life wants him gone. He had a wife. He had children. He had no connection to the Viet Cong. A simple villager. He wandered the Mekong, leaving a wake of destruction. He was pushed by grief to the point where the very fabric tore around him. Set the jungle on fire. Burn everything until flaming gel splatters across him, lighting him up for us to track.
This is the electromagnetic coil gun. It's firing projectiles at about 1/20th the speed of light. This is the real jewel. It creates a magnetosphere. We call it a relativity capsule. It amplifies the gift you already have.
Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil.
What goes up must come down, right? Well, unless you've figured out a way to harness an untapped force in the universe. Enter this lab and everything you know gets tossed out the window. Welcome to the world of John Hutchison, where the improbable may just become our reality. John Hutchison has been dabbling with electricity for decades, copying the work of famed scientist Nikola Tesla, whose AC power still runs our world. Along the way, messing about with military surplus gear, John may have stumbled across one of the most amazing scientific discoveries of our age. Experimenting with radio waves and electricity led John to discover an effect which has mystified government and military scientists. It boils, it bends, it sends objects flying through the air.
I was building these replications of Tesla's old machines and found them doing fascinating things. Then this whole thing happened, this fluke kind of thing, the Hutchison effect.
This was some effect. Air squeezed out of bottles, ice drinks moving through space, drill bits levitating. An effect so convincing and so varied, it seemed impossible to fake.
In John's labs, I've actually seen levitation of rock. I've seen levitation of steel ball bearings, glass, where they will levitate. Unbelievable. I've seen electricity go right into the objects and a million pieces just fly apart.
In fact, using only 75 watts of energy, enough for a small light bulb, Hutchison made a 60-pound cannonball rise off the table. It would also fuse dissimilar materials, heat metal but not burn the wood it sat on, shatter metal as well as change its crystalline structure. This was something to write home about.
Beginning of 1980, experimenting with all the electromagnetics and electrostatic equipments I had at the time, I started to notice some very, very unusual effects, such as a room being filled up very quickly with multicolored lights, steel bars sitting on wood and not causing any fires, metal turning to jelly, things levitating and jumping off to the ceiling, or simply go up, hover, and then fall back down.
Dubbed by some as the poltergeist machine, there is no one machine, just a lot of old Army surplus gear, randomly tuned by John. No one knows how it works. John has apparently figured out the right combination of radio waves and electrical energy to create the effect. If it could be proven, its impact would be huge. You'd have to rewrite most of the science textbooks, especially the part about what goes up. And the story gets even weirder, involving both the Canadian and U.S. military intelligence.
Here we go, into my place. Canadian government seized my laboratory, which was 22 tons of equipment. I came back from Germany and moved into this place here and started my experiments again with Army surplus and Navy surplus equipment, which I got actually from warships, and bought a lot from various surplus stores in the United States and Canada, starting in 1994. And some of this equipment actually goes back to the 1940s. Directional finding equipment, all kinds of neat configurations, waveforms and that, right up to 44 gigahertz. That gives me a wide range and wide spectrum of fields and that to work with.
Of course, given the potential magnitude of an effect which can turn metal into jelly and levitate objects, it wasn't long before news leaked out. In this case, to Colonel John Alexander with INSCOM, U.S. Army Intelligence, whose specialties included training people to bend metal with their minds, or PK, psychokinetic training.
Well, they had an 8mm film, and it was purported to have been taken in Canada, and it showed various items that were levitating, falling, accelerating, the breadth of materials that seemed to be affected by whatever the effect was certainly interesting, because it wasn't just metal. It clearly wasn't just some big magnet or something like that. And it was sufficiently interesting that we said, want to learn more about that. So we agreed to fund him.
Why was the Army so interested in John's effect? Well, look at all those objects going up instead of down. They knew a hot property when they saw it. This anti-gravity could have a huge impact on military aircraft. New types of propulsion in weight-reduced planes could fly higher and faster. So Colonel Alexander and his team went to Vancouver to test John's effect.
During 1983, U.S. Army Intelligence and Los Alamos National Laboratories set me up in a large laboratory. We did 4 months of testing.
We had a team of 6 people from Army Intelligence and from Los Alamos, including myself, that came out for the demonstration.
As usual, John revved up his machines to create his electronic force field to start the effect. Exactly what happened next is still debated by the various participants.
And things started off very good, actually, because there was a whole battery of lights, fluorescent lights that lit up really bright and then exploded, and then incandescent lamps in this massive warehouse lit up.
The effects that happened always happened when we were not present, and so cannot give any first-hand evidence.
Time progressed in all these experiments. We get mirrors breaking apart, odd voltage things happening.
But Colonel Alexander had given John some metal rods he used in his psychokinetic work to test the validity of people's metal bending claims. These rods could only be bent through extreme measures, like heating them to thousands of degrees.
Probably the most interesting was a molybdenum rod that I used in PK testing. And What had happened is he presented to me, it had a slight S-curve in the rod itself. We looked at it very carefully to see if it had been heated and gripped or something like that, and found no indication that it had. That suggested to us that there were effects that were going on.
In the end, Bob, a skeptical Los Alamos investigator, deemed the tests inconclusive. And according to this letter from Los Alamos, all documents pertaining to the Hutchison tests were destroyed.
According to Bob, the one man, things didn't work, and let's forget about it and classify it.
While officially the tests were brushed aside, Colonel Alexander has kept an open mind.
Even though nothing happened during our investigation when we were present, 5 of the 6 people present believed that it probably did happen. It just didn't happen, while we were there.
But the fact remained that the U.S. intelligence services left, apparently having written the effect off. Then on the 24th of February 1990, something strange happened. John was out of the country when his lab was forcibly seized by the Canadian government. Despite a court order to return it, John never got his equipment back. When he tried to move his experiments to Germany, the authorities there refused him permission. Months later, John heard a rumor that his brainchild was not dead and buried, but was being studied by the American military.
It was basically classified, and I've been hearing stories for years and feel now that they did get results and are replicating it at Lockheed Martin Skunk Works.
Was it a rumor, or was the largest military power on the planet experimenting with the Hutchison effect? John believes the Pentagon tests of his anti-gravity effect may have ended up at Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, home to secret U.S. military projects, including new types of super aircraft and top-secret or black ops propulsion systems. Stranger still, Nick Cook, a writer for the respected British military journal Jane's Defense Weekly, found out about John Hutchison's work through one of Lockheed Martin's top scientists.
So I was at Lockheed Martin. I was with Boyd Bushman, a senior engineer there, and he showed me a film that purported to show some of John Hutchison's levitation experiments. What we saw was a saw, some nails, a hammer, household stuff. Most of them were shooting off the top of the screen. It was almost like an impulse reaction. Normally I would have kind of looked at this stuff and just thought it's somebody's idea of a practical joke. But the fact that it was being highlighted to me by somebody from Lockheed Martin as something I should be paying attention to kind of got my attention. And that was what really convinced me to go and at least have a look at what John Hutchison was doing. I'm 99% convinced that this is not a hoax. I don't think anyone knows what is going on here, but too many people have looked into it, too many people have investigated. People who have my respect for me to think that it's a hoax.
Eventually, Lockheed Martin would send their own team to conduct tests. But John hasn't heard much since, and he worries about his technology being used for military purposes. Like Galileo in his time, who was imprisoned for looking too closely at stars, John and his technology have been stopped cold, shunned by mainstream science. Frustrated by his inability to bring this anti-gravity technology to the world, John spends his days gathering more Navy surplus gear for his much smaller apartment-based lab.
Oh, cool. Better try it and make sure it works.
Looks kind of great. Looks cool.
For those prone to claustrophobia, John's home is not the place to stay for drinks and a game of cards.
Living here in this space is like living inside a very cramped submarine. My girlfriends find this rather interesting and quite different. And actually I had some girlfriends stay overnight. They didn't seem to mind it. It hasn't got the best of things for feminine amenities, but they managed to tough it out, let's say. This is the shower box, I call it. renamed the shower box, so when I come in here and after I get out of bed, I pull up my trusty navy-colored box, which contains all kinds of weird and wonderful stuff for growing hair and creams and stuff, and shaving equipment. Then I proceed to crawl into the little box there and start cupping myself with a cup of water and shave and all that. So I go into that routine and then think of what I'll be doing for the day. So what I have is this thing is on a string. It's a toy UFO. I'm going to suspend it from a string off the floor, firing energy fields at it and see if I can get it to even move.
Working on his effects research, John sees himself as more of an artist than scientist. Turning and twisting knobs like a painter. Dipping into electrical fields to access a random force field. But in this small lab, it's even less predictable than before. The saucer is moving and changing direction, but there might be other forces at work here. Colonel Alexander, who trained people in the U.S. Army Intelligence Service to bend metal using their minds, believes that John could be inadvertently creating the Hutchison effect through his own PK, or psychokinetic powers.
One of the possibilities is that the electronic fields were actually amplifying some sort of PK experience that he was having or causing to happen. It is not uncommon, if you study the whole field of poltergeist phenomena, that strange macro PK events occur and yet seem to be beyond the control of the individual who is causing it to happen.
An example of this kind of random event happened in 1989 when a visiting Vancouver news crew was setting up at John's lab to film the Hutchison effect. The target area was that yellow crate with the metal objects. But to everyone's shock, a sponge in the back of the room took off into the air and then fell back down. John didn't actually see it and was genuinely surprised.
Like that, it went up and hit the ceiling 1 second, maybe 2 seconds, and then came down.
You're kidding.
No.
Well, some time ago I was doing some testing and got into some big trouble after I levitated a toy UFO and some other objects.
Apparently, John's experiments were lifting objects in nearby homes, and the neighbors called the police.
The police came full bore in here with engineers, inspectors. They photographed all the equipments very carefully. It's almost like if you called in a cleaning crew. They didn't touch anything. It's like they made everything look neater for some strange reason.
It seems like someone in the shadows still cares what our hero is up to. Frustrated by authorities and lack of recognition, John has been spending time developing his new project. Batteries that last forever, based on the somewhat bizarre zero-point energy theory. Followers of this theory believe that all physical matter floats in a sea of energy, which if collected and converted into electrical power, could more than meet all the world's demand for energy.
I feel everything has a life force to it, because I tend to visualize that atoms are a whole universe, and when they're combining one atom to make millions, if not trillions of them, you have a piece of metal, perhaps. Every time you run your hand across a piece of metal, you're taking off several million atoms at a time.
To demonstrate how energy is everywhere, John uses rocks from his neighborhood and in 2 hours makes a zero-point battery strong enough to power a pen light.
I make sure it bonds. Almost 1/2 electron volt. This is better than a conventional battery, simply because it never runs down. So with these things, they could last approximately as long as minerals last, up to maybe 1,000 years, unknown.
Realizing his batteries could help solve the world's energy crisis, the Japanese have embraced John and funded him to build his bigger crystal-based models.
I got orders from Japan and sponsorship for me to make more of them. So the money would come through into my bank account, and indeed I and made units that are actually in Hiroshima City.
While various zero-point energy devices were funded by the Japanese, so far, none have taken off on a mass scale. Whether building batteries or levitating objects, John Hutchison is an eccentric enigma. Of course, virtually no mainstream scientists take John or his invention seriously. But then only a little over 100 years ago, people believed it was impossible to send a radio wave across the Atlantic. Now just imagine if this backyard scientist really has discovered a primal force of nature that could transform our world.
I am only taken seriously by the military scientists. The academic scientists really don't know what to make of me. Well, to say a lot of other people too don't know what to make of me. I'm just a different person, and I'm kind of happy with myself. I don't want to try and change myself.
Proving conclusively that the Earth curves upward and that we are living on the inner surface of a hollow globe, the sun, moon, and stars all being within the circumference of 25,000 miles. We have here a working model of the hollow globe, or the cellular cosmogony as we call it. On the inner surface of this great shell, we find here the western continent. Over there is the eastern hemisphere. And here is the sphere of the heavens with sun, moon, and stars revolving. Contrary to the usual thought that the China is beneath our feet, it is in reality above us. That the surface of the Earth is round, there can be no question. But that we are living on the outer surface of a convex globe, rotating rapidly through space, is pure assumption or guesswork. This survey lasted over a period of several months, proving conclusively that the Earth curves upward and that we are living on the inner surface of a hollow globe, sun, moon, and stars all being contained within the circumference.
Welcome to Sector 12B. Sector 12B to Sector 12. All visitors must comply with 12B ordinances. Failure to comply will result in immediate apprehension and containment. Your visitation microchip is now activated and expires in 72 hours. Visitors must report back to the sector gateway within that time. Please respect the citizens of 12B and enjoy your stay.